talking about note taking. So let's begin with lectures, with which I either take notes on my iPad or on my laptop. So I can show you some of these if I can actually open it. All right, so we're given handouts for our lectures, which look something like this. Yeah, they're just like Word documents with all of our lecturers' notes on. Kind of straightforward. But yeah, so dependent on whether I like the handout or not, changes whether I take notes on my laptop or on my iPad. So for this guy, I really didn't like his handout actually. I guess there is no real way of determining whether I like it or not. It's just a yes or no. So if I don't like it, then I will make my own notes. Where did that go? So if I go into that subject, yeah, then I'll just make my own notes on Word. You know, the classic, I will type things out and insert pictures. And yeah, I'm pretty much, to be honest, copying things from the handout because that's what we need to know, but I'm just making it into my bullet points and numbers that I understand and separating it into headings, which is super useful for me. But I try not to do this because it uses up a lot of time, which I don't think is necessarily well used. So I only really make notes if I really dislike the handout, which is fair enough. But if I do not really dislike the handout, for instance, this topic, then I will just annotate the handout that we're given. So if I just go back, so this, I'll use my iPad for this. And I've just taken it, and obviously you can see I've highlighted it.
Wow.
And I will just here add my own notes in the margins and stuff. Obviously it's not as nice to look at, so that's kind of a bit of a bummer, I guess, because I quite enjoy nice looking things, but it saves me so much time that I think it's worth it. So this is what I generally try to do with most of my notes, so that I have the succinct handout with my extra bits. One thing I really try to do, especially for medicine, is it's kind of a bit contradictory because I will read a paragraph, for instance this paragraph here, and then I will just write everything that the paragraph says but around a diagram and draw arrows, just because for me, when I'm going back to this and learning it, I'm much more likely to look at this cool diagram and be like, oh cool, this alpha 1 subunit is sufficient to produce calcium permeable channel, rather than reading this and being like, oh yeah, where even is that fact? I don't know, it's probably not there. But yeah, just drawing an arrow to a diagram and writing the fact is a lot more drawing to my brain. So that's what I try to do. So yeah, those are the two things I do when it comes to lectures. And as I said, this is much preferred because it saves time. And yeah. So I also mentioned that I have practicals and supervisions. And so for supervisions, you're not really learning new content, you're consolidating the knowledge you already have. So for this, I will either just go to the handout that I have for the topic that we're going over and add extra stuff. I would have just added some of this extra text on my iPad. Or if it's the supervisor going on his own tangent, doing whatever he wants, I will just take completely separate notes. Just, a classic bit of paper. Yeah, here, Moda Super 7. This guy was chatting some stuff I didn't really understand, so I was just writing it down. Just classic bullet points. You know the drill. Or do you? I hope you do. Yeah. Just write down the things I didn't know and stuff like that. But to be honest, when a supervision is in this style, it's kind of mostly irrelevant, so it's fine not to be in my main note-taking. And then for practicals, a lot of the practicals that we do, we're not allowed to take electronic devices in because of the Human Tissue Act, because there are actual human bodies around and stuff like that. You can't legally take electronics in the room. So for that, obviously, I have to use a notebook and paper. Or alternatively, sometimes they have computers in there for you and you can just type up your notes and email them to yourself or something. But Yeah, with practicals, I don't tend to make many notes because, again, our uni gives us handouts, so they're normally pretty comprehensive. I might just annotate them, but that requires me printing them out, and I don't really like printing things out. So, yeah, those are my like main note-taking things. I think I kind of covered that all a bit quickly. If you guys have questions about notes, then go ahead, fire away. I haven't checked the chat though. Chat is empty. Perfect. Okay, cool. So I'm going to speak a little bit more about lectures now because I've shown you this, which is my pretty final product lecture material. But it's unrealistic that I would have sat in a lecture and come out with like this. I do not. So my lecture approach is kind of, it's a bit excessive, but it's basically a pre-read, an attendance, and then a post-read. So I try to cover the lecture content before I go to the lecture, and then I go to the lecture, and then I go over it again. But to be honest, the post-read kind of generally doesn't happen until a couple months later because I get busy, but that's fine. So I'm going to go through like what I normally do. So in a pre-read, I will go to the handout, which will be like completely blank at that time, and I will just go through and I'll highlight it. It's pretty passive, but it's just to try and familiarise myself with whatever is going to be thrown at me in the hour to come. And basically, if there's any words that I'm like, what the flip does that mean? Then I'll like look them up and stuff. But it's just that I don't get lost, because I found that if I didn't pre-read, when I sat in the lecture, I'd just sit there and be like, what is happening? I don't understand. What is this? What's going on? And I'd just like freak myself out. So pre-reading was actually really important to me to do that. And yeah, so I just go through and highlight it, and that would just familiarise myself with it. And not only that, I would understand the handout, which meant that when it came to the actual lecture, I could sit there with my handout open. And when he started talking about pheocyto, what does that word even say? I don't know. Pheocyto.
Pheochromocytoma.
Thank you. There you go, an actual medical student. Yeah, I would know where it was, and I could scoot to this bit of the handout and add any extra notes. And that was useful because obviously I wasn't making my own notes for most of these, and otherwise I would have just been kind of hopelessly flicking through the handout trying to find the bit which is relevant to the slides he's talking about, because quite often the slides don't correlate, which is really frustrating. But yeah, so that's what my pre-read was. It would probably take like between 15 minutes to half an hour per hour lecture, because I wasn't like learning the information, I was just familiarizing myself with it. And then, as I said, during the lecture I would go back to this and I would add in these extra notes, which is stuff from the slides that was not in the handout. My intention is that the lecture is the only time that I see the slides, because I want everything to be in one place. So if I can find the slides for this, I cannot, they're not there. Okay, this is for a different lecture series. This is for this one. Yeah, I would have the slides open on one half of my iPad and the handout open on the other, and obviously the slides were also like on the massive screen in front. But that was just so that I could put in any extra diagrams into my notes if I needed to, that weren't in the handout. And if the lecture just got too fast paced and I couldn't keep up with the handout, then I would just start annotating on the slides. And then future me would have to deal with that problem. But it looks like this guy was fine. I can't see any annotations on the slides. But yeah, for some lectures, they just go so quickly and the handouts are so disjointed compared to the slides that it was just easier to annotate on slides. However, my brain just prefers a 4-page note than looking back at slides. Whereas some people can just like flick through slides and that be their revision process. But you just got to find what works for you, I guess. So yeah, and then after the lecture, like my post-read kind of involves me going back through this handout, looking at it and actually questioning it, realizing where the things that I don't understand are and like doing something about that. So that's basically my post-read stage. And also like sometimes in a lecture, they'll just move on too quickly and I'll just end up drawing a squiggly line, being like, you missed something here, come back to it. So in my post-read, I should also do that. So yeah, that's kind of my 3-stage lecture process, which is a bit excessive, and some people have managed to streamline it a bit, but that's kind of what works for me. So that's what I keep doing. Yeah. Yeah. Does typing notes thing work for you? No, I don't remember the information just by typing down notes, because like I don't think anyone does. I have to go through it afterwards to actually learn it, but it's just typing it down so that I have somewhere to learn from. I do not use only an iPad. I use primarily an iPad. I have the 6th generation normal iPad. I use that like mostly in lectures, except when I'm typing things. I also have a MacBook Pro because I'm a bit excessive. So yeah, I use that for like Word, basically like just Word, for essay writing and for note taking when I'm not annotating handouts. And oh yeah, if anyone wants to ask, I use Goodnotes on the iPad, and I think it's amazing. So recommend Goodnotes. If you have any iPad note taking specific questions, then go ahead. Yes. Would I always pre-read? I would always try to pre-read, but obviously sometimes it's not possible if you run out of time or don't manage your time properly. So yes, but for me, I think pre-reading is more important than post-reading, which is a bit controversial. But if I didn't pre-read, I literally found the value of actually going to the lecture was so minimal that it just wasn't worth doing it. I'd get more value out of just pre-reading it during the time I would have gone to the lecture. So, yes. Cool. If that's it for questions for now.
Oh yeah, why is Goodnotes better than the other note-taking apps?
To be honest, I haven't used other note-taking apps, but I've never felt the need to. So.
Perfect. Right. Thanks.
If I were to cut in quickly, I've used Goodnotes and Notability, and your writing just looks better in Goodnotes. And the interface is much nicer to use as well.
How much does it cost?
I think it's about £10 for both of them.
Nice.
I have both, and I use Notability more for filing and keeping lecture notes, but Goodnotes are where I take notes.
Yeah. Okay. Nice one. I can talk a bit about like how I learn now. Okay. What, you prefer to use paper all the time? Do you think it's too slow? Not at all. Like, I don't think writing on paper is any different to writing on the iPad, time-wise. I decided to move to iPad just because I realised I would have so much paper that it would be so difficult when it came to exam term to revise from it.
Yeah, with the volume of notes, it doesn't make sense with medicine to use paper.
Yeah.
Because you just have folders and folders of stuff.
Pretty much.
So you shouldn't use paper for medicine.
Yeah. But when I only note take on my iPad when I'm actually like learning. I use whiteboards to like write stuff out. But I'll talk about that in a bit.
Even beyond even beyond like the whole paper is like you have loads of stuff lying around. Also, it's just easier to search because especially with subjects where you have loads and loads of content, the amount of times you'll need to revisit stuff, it's so much easier to just search something like a specific word rather than hunt through like for which lecture it was mentioned in.
For sure. And that's actually something that Goodnotes is really, really good for if I go to Goodnotes now. Say I'm in a supervision and I don't even know, my supervisor asked me a question on something obscure, like a drug. Propanol, for instance, and I don't remember which lecture series it was in. I don't know which lecture it was. It would be so difficult to like go through my notes and try and find it, but I can just search the entirety of my Goodnotes app and find this paragraph where propanolol was spoken about. And what's even better is that it actually searches your handwriting as well. If I can spell. So like if I search serotonin, which is obviously something that comes up all the time, you can see that it's recognised my handwriting. And to be fair, my handwriting's quite neat. I have friends whose handwriting are more like a typical doctor, you might say. And like Goodnotes has no problem deciphering what it has. So that's super useful. Like here it's recognised that I wrote serotonin there. So that's really convenient. Yeah, Goodnotes all the way. Okay, cool. Goodnotes. Cool. Talking about like my learning process, so kind of moving on from notes. I have the classic Ali Abdul timetable thing, if it will actually open, so I can show you. Here, like, you'll probably be relatively familiar with this from a video, but this is just where I keep track of everything I've done, everything I need to do, and yeah. So I have a tab for each of my subjects. This is head and neck anatomy, for instance. I've split it up into different categories depending on the subject. So this is like a practical subject, so this was each of the practicals, and these are different things I need to know from it. I just write the date of when I pre-read it, when the session was, when I post-read it, and yeah, these are subsequent reviews, so this is like retrospective timetable. And there's also other things in here that I don't know what they are. Unhide. Oh, that's kind of irrelevant. But yeah, it's kind of convenient because you can have everything that you need to know in like one place. So, and hide it later when you don't need to know it anymore. I think there's probably like supervisions and stuff in there as well. But apparently I can't use Excel. But yeah, I use Excel as well because Excel is great. It has like, I'm just more used to using it than Notion or any alternatives, and I'm not too bothered about how it looks. I did not mean to click on hide. Okay, cool. So yeah, for this I will mark it down when I pre-read it, and I'll use this like rainbow system. Easy, red is what the flip is going on, green is cool, I know this. And then when I went to the session, I'd do it again. When I post-read it, again, and then every time I went over it subsequently, I'd do it again. And you can just see that for everything. Yeah, that's super convenient. This is actually for a subject that I've sat the exam for now because it was examined last term. So yeah, you can see things slowly getting greener as time goes on. Except for these, apparently I didn't do them, but you know, whatever. So I just do this for every single subject. These are subjects which I haven't yet sat the exam for, so looking a little more sparse. And I also often have like a question column here, so that I can be like, lecture 2, what is the Hill equation? I don't know. I still need to go over that and work out what the Hill equation is. But that's convenient. Whenever I'm planning what I'm doing in a day, I'll refer to this and I'll look and I'll be like, okay, so actually today I did this potassium channels lecture and it was pretty good. The date is the 20th of May. Yeah, that's it. That's what I do every single time I've done something.
So they get darker the longer ago they were, right?
No, they don't actually change. So they will just stay colour. There's no formulas in it. It's just me putting it in manually.
Right, okay.
It's
so
just
if you
like...
were to like improve it, what would you change? Would you want that to do it automatically?
I mean, potentially, but not. Probably not, because I can just look at the value of the date and be like, okay, I last did this in October. I thought it was pretty good in October, so I probably won't need very long to go over it now. But like, obviously, I'll need some time because it's been 5 months or something. Well,
can you send me this,
months.
or is this like private?
Yeah, I can send you it, no problems.
Cool.
Yeah. So this is basically my Bible when it comes to work. This is what I'll look at like 6 times a day or whatever.
Yeah.
And this just has like all of my lectures on it. So yeah, that is how I determine what I'm doing. Once I've decided that, then I will move on to like the learning process. So we can talk a bit about that now. The way I learn is pretty boring. Like, I will read something and then I'll write it and then I'll read it again, which sounds a bit dumb, but basically, so if I want to, yeah, let's go to H&A because, sure. If I look and see the clinical application session 4, this is red, so that's probably not that great. I will go to those notes. H&A. Practicals. Session 4. Oh no, this is not what I wanted. Where actually is this? Oh, it's literally right here. Okay. I go to session 4. I will open it up. Oh man. see, I normally do this on my iPad, which I'm a lot used to using, but I can't screen share easily on my iPad. Okay, let's just... Oh, it's actually right here. Sorry, guys. So yeah, this was a page that I was referring to as being read in my thing. I would look at this, I'd go, okay, there are, 6 points here. I would probably read through the titles. I'd go, okay, trigeminal neuralgia, that's going to open a link. Fracture of the mandible, dislocation of temporomandibular joint, hypoglossal nerve palsy, conditions of the parotid gland, conditions of the submandibular gland. And I'd be like, okay, cool, 6 points. I would close it. I would get out my whiteboard. I'd write out those 6 points from memory. I'd elaborate what I knew about them. So like hypoglossal nerve palsy, I'll talk about like its innervations and the symptoms that it will create. And I would see what I could remember. And then after writing that down, I'd reopen the notes. I'd go back through it and I'd see like, oh, trigeminal neuralgia is a neuropathic disorder. Okay, I got that, cool. The pain may last from a few seconds to minutes or hours. Oh, I didn't talk about how long the pain may last. So that's something I'd then add to my whiteboard. And then I'd keep reading it, write down extra stuff I didn't know. And then I'd literally just repeat that process again and again. I'd probably do it like 3 or 4 times until I got everything on the page. And then after doing that, I'd go back to my Excel and I'd mark it a different colour. And then I'd come back to it another day. And yeah, it's actually pretty boring, but that's just how I learn literally everything. It's just what works for me, it's what worked from A-level. And then obviously I would also use past papers when it came nearer to the time to test my understanding. There aren't that many questions available for uni level stuff. Well, at least like my university doesn't supply you with many actual past paper questions, which is a bit peak, but you gotta deal with it. So yeah, that's the way that I use like active recall, because I make myself remember it. And if the colour of my thing, so the one that I was giving the example for was this clinical applications one, which was red, which means that, oh, I probably don't know that very well. That's why I would have read it first before writing things out. But if I was doing the facial nerve, for instance, which I've gone over countless times and was a pretty good green, then I would start by just writing down everything I remembered rather than prompting myself before. So that just helps you to recall it and bring it back. Personally, I choose not to use Anki, which kind of goes against all medical religion, but basically I really hate the idea of having these flashcards and having them build up over time if I don't do them, and having thousands and thousands existing. I don't know. It's just something mental that I can't get on with. Like lots of my friends use it and they use it excellently, but it's never been particularly appealing to me. So yeah, I don't do it. Cool. Oh, that's my Spotify. Where is Notion? Not even Notion. Discord. There we go.
Where's
Passnet hasn't had. Okay, cool. So to memorize the content, I just read, write, reread. Yeah, pretty much. Like, as I said, when it gets nearer to the end and when I'm actually familiar with the content, then I'll just start off by writing and then read it afterwards, if that makes sense. Just so that I'm not prompting myself when I'm actually recording the knowledge from my brain. Thank you, RP. I will check out these questions. Do you use Anki? And no, I do not use Anki, as I've just said. So yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I also don't like the idea of making the cards myself. I know that you can get the cards from different sources, like, pretty easily. But, like, the physical making of the cards, I think, is a waste of time. Source. Because, like, I don't know, I'm just too attached to my A4 pages of notes. So it would be extra time that I spent making the Yankee cards that, again, I don't think would be worth the time. And also, like, if I'm using someone else's, then I wouldn't trust someone else to make them properly. So, yeah. The Notion icon of days not quite. Yeah, that's true. I also don't use Notion. I used to use Quizlet. I can actually show you some of my Quizlets. Oh, I don't know what I'm looking at. Oh, apparently something about coronavirus. That's fun. Here you go. Here is my Quizlet. I use this for some things. So again, H&A, this is an exam I've already done, and I actually stole my friend's Quizlet cards, which is why I was okay with using it, because I hadn't wasted the time of making my own.
Wasted.
Well, yeah, I genuinely think it's a waste of time. But yeah. So, yeah, I would do these if I was bored of reading and
Where's the
writing.
neck?
Basically. Where is the net, guys? I don't know. It's the reading between. Oh, it's speaking to me. That is not what I meant to do. But yeah, okay. Yeah, I think Quizlet is a lot nicer to use than Anki just because it looks nicer. And that's kind of a big thing for me. If I'm spending 8 hours a day plus doing work, I don't want to spend it looking at a gross interface like Anki. So yeah. Any other questions about learning? Do you have A-level notes? I do have A-level notes, but my A-level notes are paper. So yeah. I did say I don't trust other people's cards. H&A, I trusted my friend. He got like 5th in the year last year. And like I had a read through the cards that he'd made alongside my notes. And like for all the sets that I checked, they were all they included everything I would have wanted to know. And not even everything I wanted to know, they included like completely everything. So I was very happy using these cards. So yeah. Has your question been asked? Oh, sorry. Is this your question? Yes. Do you think Notion is a good platform for collaboration for solutions and stuff amongst pre-med students, where you can log your stuff but also share it with all of others? Okay. To be honest, I don't use Notion, so I'm not really the person equipped to answer this. I was about to say RP uses Notion and is also a medical student, so.
Pre-med. I mean, none of us were pre-med.
Oh, that's true.
Fiona hasn't been pre-med. We don't have that stupid system here, so.
Yeah, I'm in like my preclinical years of medical school. When you use Quizlet, did you use long-term mind project? Yes, I did, but they got rid of that like a month ago, 2 months ago, unfortunately. Which question? Another thing that Cambridge do is essays, which is a bit rogue for a subject like medicine, in my opinion. But for this, I would just like plan essays either on paper or on my iPad or on my laptop. I really didn't have a system for this because it was just like a knowledge blurt of things that I knew. So yeah, I don't know. I'm probably not the person to talk about essays because they're not my favourite thing in the world.
God.
Yeah. Cool. Are there any more questions about like learning before I go on to planning? I don't know what Trello is.
It's like a task management board thing. Kanban board.
Cool. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Sticky notes. Excellent. What do you think of the toggle list idea? Yeah, it seems good. If I use Notion, I would use the toggle list idea, but I don't use Notion, so I don't use it. I think maybe, yeah, it can work for people. But seeing as I am so integrated into my like Word Goodnotes system, there's no point in me like converting it into Notion just for some toggles, which I don't think would be. Yeah.
So is the toggle list like a hierarchical list of topics?
I think so.
So how is that different to folders that you're using right now? It's not, is it?
Like it's not, but people use the toggle list as like a flashcard thing where you can open the toggle to see the answer to a question.
Right. Oh, that's rotted. Just use Anki.
Yeah.
It works better if you don't want to like fill up your Anki with loads of information that's like not completely useful, but is still good to know. And that way, like you don't end up with thousands of cards in Anki, and it stays pretty manageable.
Yeah, that's why I don't use Anki. Cool. Cool. Excellent. Okay, cool. I'm going to move on to planning for a bit, and then if there are more questions, just chuck them in chat. So, time-wise, obviously, you get pretty busy at school. I'll see if I can bring up my calendar. I have so many things open from this. Kind of stresses me out. Oh, well, there you go. This is like a typical-ish, busy-ish week. Everything in red is like compulsory contact hours, lectures, supervisions, lectures, practical. So yeah, everything in red is my uni timetable. Everything in blue is extra stuff that I'm doing. And then all the white or grey space is time I have to study or time I have to do other things.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you're super busy like this, it's quite hard to manage time sometimes, especially if I'm trying to pre-read and post-read for every single one of these red things that's happening. So yeah, I actually use like physical paper to plan my time. So I did 1 week try like doing it on my what's this called, calendar, so I can actually try and find that. I don't know where it is. Oh, it was there. Yeah, and this is what it looks like, and I hated it, so I stopped. But like I did it for a week where I put in like everything I was doing at every minute of the day pretty much into like calendar. But this happened and I was very unhappy because I just felt like I had no free time, which obviously kind of was the case. But yeah, so this is like time blocking in essence, and I actually do this but just like in a notepad where it doesn't stress me out loads. I'm gonna show you on like Goodnotes the sort of thing I do on paper. So yeah, this is what I would do on like a daily basis. I would go through, I'm using Monday the 24th here as an example. 24th. Okay, cool. At 10 I have an HR lecture, 12 bod lecture, etc. All these things I need to do at different times. Well, first I'd like look on the next day and see what I haven't done yet. So for instance, if there was a human reproduction lecture the next day that I had not yet pre-read for, I'd be like, okay, I kind of need to do that pretty urgently. So let's say if I wake up at 7, after I do my waking up stuff at 8, I will do my HR lecture. HR pre-read. Okay, and then that'll probably take me this hour long slot, as in it would probably take me about half an hour, and then I need to get ready for my NHB lecture. Cool. NHB is an hour, fine. HR is an hour. Now I have an hour between these two lectures. What am I going to do? Well, first, it's going to take me like 10 minutes to get between these lectures, so I don't really need to take that into account. So I can look at the work that I need to do. I will have like a master list of all the work that I need to do for supervisions, like essay writing and things like this. So I might be like, okay, I have an NHB essay to plan. So I'm going to plan it in this hour. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to my bod lecture. I'm doing some H&A revision with George at 1. Cool. If I wanted to elaborate more on that, I would just like draw an arrow here and be like, okay, let's do session 5. And go over some short answer questions about Horner syndrome. Yeah, that was probably going to happen for like 3 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. So that means at 3 o'clock, I have more time. So at 3 o'clock, I would do something else. What have I got planned? I haven't had lunch yet this day. So at 3 o'clock, I should probably eat lunch. And then I'm probably going to have a bit of a break. 4 o'clock, I have table tennis. 5, I have a HR supervision. I have another break between 6 and 7. That'll be my dinner slot because I don't have time afterwards. 7:15, I have choir. And then at 8:30, I have a talk to give. After that, it's 10 p.m. Do I really want to do more work? Probably not. So at that point, I would probably leave it blank because I don't like scheduling free time stuff. But if I had like work I need to do for the next day, then it would carry on forever, basically. This is what I do. Most of the work I have to do will take like either an hour or a half an hour slot. So this kind of like 2 lines per hour works pretty well for me. Like if it's sound running in, take me half an hour, then I can do that. Okay, cool. I'm also going to pre-read for the blood lecture that I have in the next half hour. And I'll add that in. It's not particularly elegant, but it's what works for me when I'm super busy. It's quite useful if I only have like a half-hour gap between things, and I can just like slot in here. Be like, oh, I have a spare half hour here, and I need to do some MCQs on something. I can just add them in. That's pretty much how I plan my time when I'm super busy. Again, I will refer back to this Excel sheet to see what I have to do. When I still have lectures going on, so I have like extra lectures. Imagine these haven't happened yet. For the first thing, this first column is for pre-reading. The next one is for actual attending the lecture, and then post-reading. So I will write down the date that this is happening. So let's say that one's tomorrow, which is 21st of May. This one might be 2 days later. For instance, when I look at my Excel sheet, then I can go, okay, cool. I need to pre-read for this lecture tomorrow, so I need to do that today. And then I'll add that to my list. It's quite straightforward, I guess, but it's just how I streamline everything into one notepad where I have everything I need to do. What happens when you mess up your timetable? Well, I think I generally don't mess up my timetable when I block out my time like this. I try really hard to be realistic. If I mess up my timetable, like, I've planned it wrong. Do you provide more time for a task than it might need? No, like, I plan the time that I think it's going to need. Like, I don't procrastinate, basically. Like, by using this time blocking method, I keep myself accountable. If I have an hour to pre-read for my HR lecture before my NHB lecture, for instance, like, I just have to get it done. I don't tend to procrastinate. I don't really know how, to be honest. I just kind of sit down and do it. Yeah, I tend to procrastinate more when, well, yeah, indeed, Parkinson's law, maybe. Yeah, like at the weekend when I have more free time because I have less lectures and contact hours, then time does, like, I tend to procrastinate a bit more, but I'll go to the library or something for a study sesh at the weekend, and that helps get things done. I think it's a lot easier to time block when you have things during the day. Do you study more at home? What do you mean? As in, where do I study? So, well, right now, I'm spending all the time at home because stay home, you know? I love working in the library because, number one, it's kind of social. I can sit on the table with my friends and, you know, not talk to them, but just sit there. That's kind of nice. You can take breaks together, and like you can just snatch your phone out of your friend's hand when they put it up. It's really good during exam term because when everyone starts like revising for 12 hours a day, it's a bit depressing just to be sat in your room for that time. So, you know, when there's like 50 people sat in a library all revising for 12 hours a day, it's so much better. Yeah, if you don't have friends who revise, then it's a bit of a tough one. Yeah, so either libraries or cafes. I also really enjoy studying in cafes, but I have to be doing something that doesn't require much thought because I do get distracted by sound. I can also work in my house though, but I just prefer to change it up. Obviously, as a student, you kind of have... Yoink, can you shut up? Oh, I totally muted him. Can you guys still hear him? Yoink is in the satellite. Oh, nice. I didn't realise I could actually mute him, given he's the owner. But, you know, I did. Okay, cool. So, yeah, given that as a student, you probably live in, like, a single room as a university student, that is. I think it's quite important to like separate sleep time with sleep place with study place. So that's why I like working in the library. And that probably helps me to not procrastinate as well. Or again, cafes are really good if I want to change it up. Also in Cambridge especially, there are like 50 different libraries. So you can like go explore different libraries, which is pretty cool. Any more questions? I don't really know why I'm sharing my screen right now when all I'm looking at is Discord. Yeah, literally any questions about like studying, notes, planning, I guess. The boys don't go to the library at GCSE. True, true, true. The boys do not go to the library at GCSE. During school, like I just revised at home. At A level, I had like there was literally a room in the school which I just claimed. It was a classroom that nobody used ever, so I just used that as my study room, which was cool. But like, I feel like most schools don't have that, so the library works perfectly fine. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I could waffle more, but I don't really want to waffle without purpose. But everyone's just talking about Fight Club, so that's cool. Yeah. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now, unless anyone has questions that I can show you for. But yeah, just a quick reminder that like all these study streams that we're holding are for charity. So we are raising money for a charity which donates money to like children at schools in Cambodia, Myanmar, and Nepal, which is United World Schools.